Hello and welcome to yet another edition of E-Expressions for the New Indian Express. I have with me two wonderful ladies who know a thing or two about education. Dr. Tamilachi Thangapanyan. I'm so happy, I think I almost pronounced it right. And Supriya Sule, both members of parliament, and Mr. Prabhu Chawla, editorial director. It's actually both you ladies have done considerable work in education, so you know what you're talking about when you talk about the national education policy. Supriya, you've asked apparently the maximum number of questions on education in the Lok Sabha, so well done. And Dr. Thangapanyan, you know the world of teaching from inside out, having been a lecturer at Queen's Mary. So may I begin with you, Supriya, and ask, since you also run two schools, really what do you think of the new education policy? Do you feel that its primary goals are going to be implemented the way they ought to? Or do you feel that there is a certain political agenda when they talk about ancient India and some of the things that we ought to learn from there? And of course, the language policy.
Well, Kaveri, thank you very much for inviting me. And I think Sumati, as I call her,
yes,
I don't have to a very complicated name of please Sumati to me, who's a dear friend. So Sumati, I'm so happy that thought that we could speak on education, because I think the biggest equalizer in this world, which gives you an identity, is your education. It sometimes even goes beyond your name. Your name becomes relevant, and your qualification or what you are qualified to do really gives you an identity. So I think here I look at education policy in two parts. One as a legislator and second as a parent as well.
yes.
So there are two ways of looking at it. And well, I welcome the new education policy, because I think education is something which has to evolve with time. Any policy for that matter, be it healthcare, be it education, be it women's rights, anything. It has to be relooked every 5 years. So even if I'm in the opposition, I welcome all these changes, you know. But my biggest challenge, which is a part of your question, is where is it headed, and is it really going to go back in time?
Yes.
So my request to this government is, please make all the changes. We can debate it, we can discuss it, and we must change with time. But please do not go back in time. We have to go ahead of time. So I don't want, because I sometimes see very senior ministers in this central government talk about things which almost like Stone Age comparisons. It's not scientific. Yeah. So I request the government to have a good education policy, which is scientific based. It could be anything. Everything is science. As long as it has a good scientific base, I'm open to any change and I welcome it. But there are a lot of shortcomings as well. So I do understand every policy change is not going to have solutions to every problem. I'll give you a small example in this, is that we talk about people with special needs. Now, there is nothing specifically mentioned about children with special needs. I mean, basic thing is, how much money are we going to spend? I think that's the first basic step. It's not about 2%, 5%. Now you will say, oh, 2% of the GDP or 5%, 6% GDP is in negative just now. So I don't want 5% of the GDP. So that's the first thing that worries me, you know, because normally people say, we are 6%. We don't want 6% of this GDP. I think we owe it. Any government, be it us or be it theirs. I think education and healthcare are two basic rights of every child in this universe. Why only in India? Anyway, I want to give Sumati some time, so I'm not going to just hog all the time.
No, Sumati, go ahead, and then we'll come back to Supriya.
Nice to see you all, my dear friend Supriya, Kaveri, and Mr. Prabhu Chawla. As Supriya has set the ball on rolling, I would also like to look at the policy in 3 dimensions. I am an academician, because a teacher, a professor never retires, because teaching is not a profession which you just weigh by the wages. It is your way of life. So from a point of view of an academician, as well as a legislator, and very importantly, as a member of the DMK party. That's my third perspective. A party which has always stood up for social justice and the right to education, and a strong voice for federalism. So for me, this new NEP looks like a sugar-coated pill, of which you have to be really wary of the components in a very serious sense of the word. As my friend Supriya has rightly pointed out, education is a universal term. That is the most proud badge wherever you go. That is your proud identity, irrespective of your race, color, caste, creed, or whatever it is. So it's a basic right of every Indian child to get the right education based on scientific temper, critical thinking, and creative imagination. These are the three key words. But the present NEP, as it had rightly been pointed out by our party president, as well as by the academics all over India, seems to have more of the Sangh Parivar color. For example, it has left out two important quotients which have been quoted by the Kothari Commission. Two important factors. One thing is the Kothari Commission insisted on universal values.
Right.
Any education should focus on it. But the shift now in this new policy has been on Indian values. Also, it has insisted on common school system, which provides the equality of education irrespective of all the strata of children from all the strata of society. So like this, and also as I pointed out in the beginning that it is against the federalistic policy of the state governments. It is monolithic, centralizes everything, and it is homogeneous. All those things we can discuss as and when we go through it. Also, particularly when speaking as a citizen of Tamil Nadu, we have two important problematic areas in it, the three language component of it, because we as a state, we have been very insistent and we are following the two language formula as has been promised by a former Prime Minister, and you must be very familiar with our well-pronounced Hindi agitation. And these are all the key points, but I do have many disparities. That's why our party has taken it up when it was on the draft stage itself. It has set up a review committee, and all the components have been reviewed, and we presented a memorandum also. So for me to keep, I mean, say it in a nutshell, I would say that it is old sort of Manusmriti components in a new bottle. That's how I would phrase it.
So Priya, what do you have to say to that? You alluded to it right at the beginning. Why do you feel that so strongly?
No, I would say one step ahead that I appreciate what Sumati is talking about, universal education.
Yes.
I'm not against Indian education, not at all, because I have a lot of faith in Indian education, but I know where she's coming from. She probably wants it to be a liberal, scientific, I think, Sumati, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. True.
That I think for me personally, I made sure my daughter did not go for her undergraduate. I really worked hard on it because I really felt that Indian education up to graduation can really be wonderful. And it keeps you grounded. You have great learning institutes in this country. Of course, for her master's, she's going away now. But I was really happy that she stayed back for her bachelor's degree. So I'm trying to say that Indian education, a lot of people have challenges with it, but we are not talking about new systems of that. I think the biggest challenge which I'm finding is this is what happens to RTE.
Yes.
Now, because in right to education, the whole thing was 6 to 14. Now you're going from 3 all the way to 18, which is wonderful. And I absolutely welcome that step. But while I welcome this, how are you going to integrate it is the big question. So there are very good pointers in the policy, but how are you going to implement it? The credit system. I love the credit system. It's wonderful that if a child wants to do science and economics and arts, all three from different colleges, it's a great system. But how are you going to implement it in our system starting in 2022? Because we're not prepared for it. So in Mumbai University is not like Harvard University or any other foreign, or Oxford, because in Mumbai University, there are over 700 colleges. Now they are all in different areas. Going from Mumbai's one college to another college, if I have to take 2 credits, will take 2 hours for the child.
That's
You
true.
know, so the intent is very, very good. I'm not taking away just because I'm sitting in the opposition. I'm not going to just say that it's a sham. But what is the roadmap to this policy? The pointers all look lovely. The trailer is lovely. Like in picture abhi baki hai. What about the movie? Where is the movie and where is the roadmap to the movie?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And education is an exceptionally serious topic. It makes and breaks your life.
Right.
I don't like to watch on television, NEET exam hogi ki nahi, we are going to courts. You know what cost it comes at emotional, and in a normal Indian home, the best gift anybody can give to their children is education. We can't play around with it. You can't change dates for it. It's somebody's career. Yeah, for you it's a decision, but for somebody it's a make or break of that entire family and the future. So I think this is something which needs seriously to be debated. I mean, I am with folded and asking all channels. Please, you can show what else you want, but please let's have a debate on this policy, which is the most important thing India is changing right now, if you ask me. I mean, nothing else matters in this country right now.
I agree. Supriya, may I quickly ask another question related to this? The whole
I think Mr. Chawla is looking for some attention and intervention.
Yeah, because she is not giving me attention at all.
no, please go.
She's not giving me attention at all. Because she's trying to keep both the ladies away from me so that I may not ask any question.
No, please go ahead.
You see, please correct me. For both the ladies, I'm requesting folded hand. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm getting some impression here, which may be wrong or right, that both of you think that Indian values are not universal. There's something wrong about Indian values. I'm not defining Indian values in terms of religion or caste, because she said Indian values, because universal has been replaced by Indian. And according to me, Indian values are also much more universal than the universal has ever provided. So what is the difference between Indian values and universal values? You are objecting about the words.
No, I think let Sumati say what she says, then I will say.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we're going to think absolutely alike without being in the same room.
Thank goodness that you just picked up on it, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, because we are also proud Indians, and we always, we never have any intention of keeping it or looking at with a condescending attitude. My point here is, it is a very broader term because India is being proud about its diversity and multicultural regional components. So how can you define like one nation, one ration card? How can you have a one total single syllabi for all the states of India, which all have their unique cultural traits and language, in cuisines, in all the cultural festivals, everything. See, for example, I would like to quote a saying by Chinua Achebe. He said, see, why should a student, a South African, student of Africa or Nigeria, has to read about Wordsworth's daffodils sitting in an African classroom? If you want us to teach the English language, teach the language which has the components of our area, from our soil, from our cultural components. So that sounds perfect rational to me.
Anyway, let Supriya also reply, because what you said and what you are now trying to explain is something different, according to me. Because I'm talking about what Indian versus universal.
I'd like to get a word, Mr. Chawla. I agree with where you're coming from. I here slightly differ with my friend Sumati. My point is, I agree with you that Indian values are most universal. I completely agree with you. But in Marathi, there's a saying, Shraddha and Andhashraddha. Means I have Shraddha over you, means I respect you, but not blind faith. What has happened, unfortunately, with people like me and Sumati and myself are concerned, is when we see senior ministers talking about Stone Age things. That's when we panic, because it's a basic Indian teachings. I mean, in Maharashtra, we have the Sant Vangmay, which is so liberal, which is more liberal than me, Kaveri and Sumati put together today. But we want it to be scientific based. It's like, you know, I tell people about COVID. People say that, oh, minute you can't, you must wash your hands. This is the most basic Indian tradition.
Yeah.
Wash your hands, have the bath.
Also your feet.
Everything my grandmother told me to do is what we are doing. We were not French kissing and hugging people. They did namaste, there was social distance, there was all that. So I think, or Indian balanced meal, like haldi is the new fashion shot that
No.
everybody's. Haldi is an integral part of our Indian food. It doesn't have to be modern. So I agree with Mr. Chawla. I think what concerns all of us is when these ministers talk about science being very vague for them. That's why our objection is. Our objection is not to anything which is Indian. We are proud Indians. We love the Indian food. We love the Indian values. We love the Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita tells you that please do the right thing and stand up for the right thing. It gives
I'll ask Sumati whether she agrees with you. Gita is the right thing.
No. What does Gita tell you? Gita tells you 3 options, that if you do this, this is what will happen, this can happen, this may not happen. So you have to make the choice. Gita is not telling you do this. It's telling you the scenario. So I think that's what we are happy to learn, and we want our children to learn. So I think
Thangapanian is there. I'll just interrupt you here, because what you are telling is absolutely right. Some of the ministers taking some kind of statement which is not acceptable by any civilized person anywhere. But I am saying there are other people in Dravidian politics also. Some of the statements made by Dravidian leaders are not acceptable to the rest of the Indians. That doesn't mean Dravidian parties are bad. They have their own way of culture. They have their own culture. Therefore, that should also be included in Dravidian. Is also Indian part of it. It is not an ancient part of it, because I heard her, because it must be a slip of tongue, when she says citizens of Tamil Nadu. I was a little surprised about that she used the word citizens of Tamil Nadu in the beginning somewhere. But when you are talking, I like Dravidian culture. Some of the things are very best. Dr. Karnanudhi, I used to meet him quite often. He was the best Indian I ever met in South India. So what I impression, she talked about 2 language model. I'm going back to the same situation. The 3 language formula is not the creation of this BJP or NDA. It has been accepted by Indian parties, all the parties, including the Congress and everybody else. So she is talking 2 language, means you want to accept an English language, but not any Indian language. You accept any Indian language you want to accept. That is what the policy says, I understand.
No, I would like to make it very clear that when English has been accepted universally as an official communication language, why do you want, I'm not here just specifically saying Hindi, when already there is a 2 language.
I didn't say Hindi, it can be Marathi. You can have Marathi in Tamil Nadu.
Whatever it is. But what we are afraid is that, see, in the name of the 3 language formula, there's a backdoor entry of imposition of Hindi or any other thing. That's what we are quite wary of, because we have had our own track record. For example, I would like you to show a photo. See, this is a photo of Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvarur. It is written in English as well as in Hindi. What is the necessity? No, not in Tamil. No, nothing in Tamil. What is the necessity of being written in Hindi as well as in English in Tamil Nadu in a central university in Tiruvarur? This is how the backdoor entry of the imposition of language will. That is why we are all quite wary of all these, the 3 language formula. English has been given as an official communicative language, and all of us is quite comfortable with that. And why should a child, let's say beginning with a 3-year-old, why does she or have to undergo the burden of learning the languages, 3 languages, when already, like a 2 language formula is comfortably existing in the Tamil Nadu educational system? We call it as Samachir Kalvi, equal distribution of the educational system. That's what we call. When we are quite comfortable with that, why is it? And again, coming to this Supriya's point, like we are all afraid of going to the Stone Ages, like the Gurukula Shista. See, there is one quotient in this which says the tribal areas early childhood care and education will be introduced in ashram shalas, a Sanskrit word in the NEP. What do you mean by the ashram shalas? And what does it actually mean to the tribal and the remote areas? Why is the Sanskritization of everything in this? Why do you want people to go back to the sea? I would like myself to be introduced as, if you're asking, come on Sumati, what are you, who are you? I would describe myself as a universal human being, a proud Indian, and equally a proud Tamilian. This is how all these things go. So when it comes to Sanskritization, when it comes to this under the umbrella of Indianization, Indian culture, we have a problem. That doesn't mean mean that we have a condescending attitude. I mean, Tamil Nadu is part of India, and we have contributed much to the, whatever it is, the patriotic struggle, or our former chief ministers have contributed much to the growth of India, right from Perundalevar Kamaraj's days, Kalaignar, and I can name all of them. So it's not that, see, whenever we voice our views like this, which are very distinctly, which have the federalistic regional voices, people will always have a tendency to brand as unpatriotic. But while that's not the case here, our problem is Sanskritization, imposition, and going back to the Stone Age, like imposing the old system of Gurukula system, all these things, like vocational stream of education. We opposed it when respected our great leader Rajaji brought it as Kulakalvi Titta. I mean, this is how these are all the problematic area. We feel that these are all the backdoor entries to all those things which we opposed way back in 1968 itself.
Supriya, can I just bring you in here and talk about vocational education, taking off from where Sumati left? Because that is one area that could be problematic, especially since it's after class 5. From class 6 itself, you have a child choosing between vocational and, core academics. Isn't that a little worrisome? Because, you could always have the weaker, academically weaker children being sort of, kept apart this way, This is one way of sort of selection, survival of the fittest, and the weakest being pushed into vocational education. Do you have any concern about that?
Yeah, Kaveri, anyway, I have a slightly different view than Sumati about it, but I don't want to go back, but I just want to put it on record that I'm a big supporter of universal education, and I'm personally open to all languages and all cultures of all. So I just feel that if there is universal education in India, I'm completely open to it, because I think it's wonderful. If everybody in India has one education, it's a simplified form for testing and everything. But anyway, now how governments are going to do it, are the state boards going to go away? These are all complex issues which we don't have clarity right now on. And I think it will be nice if we can make sure every child gets an equal opportunity in this, which is in our constitutional right given to us. But talk about vocational, I think too many choices. And what's worrisome about vocational is in the 10th standard, if you do not, vocational is an option. Yeah. Now, this is where I have a problem, that you cannot give, let it be, why should vocational education be looked down upon? So I think there I have an objection in this policy, and that's not how it should be done. Vocational and proper education could be integrated. You can give options, but don't give so many options either. Like, I am probably a little outdated in this, and you probably feel, but even as a parent, I say that I am for exams. I'm not against exams, because exam is not a fearful thing that you need to, because what happens is most children, if you don't grade them in whatever way, up to the 8th, 9th standard, and then you suddenly say, oh, he doesn't understand or she doesn't understand maths, then it's a complete back burner. So why not start grading them in a nice way? It doesn't have to be a board exam where the whole house is going helter-skelter because, arey, board exam chal rahe, TV mat lagao, bahar mat jao. None of that. You're almost quarantined because your child is in a board exam. So I think that's something we can come to terms with in a different way. But I have complete objection. I feel every child must go through an exam procedure. There can be simplified. The fear can be reduced. But if you don't, suppose I don't know maths till the 8th standard, and suddenly then you say, oh, now you can fail the kid. Why didn't you tell me in the 2nd standard? It was so much easier to catch up. So I think these kind of things which they're trying to ease, so-called ease education, will skill us less. Why would I want to be skilled any less? Yeah. And each child is made differently. His or her turning point is different. I mean, Sumati will be able to talk better about this than me, but every child is gifted. There is no every child. Every child is bright. I am not of that opinion that just because you go to Harvard, Stanford, you're brilliant, and if you don't go, you are not. It's not like that. Every child is gifted in a different way.
Sumati, as a teacher, what do you feel about this policy? There's a lot of expectation from the teacher, being completely reoriented, learning new skills, being able to impart this new way of learning as well to the student. We're expecting a lot from them. Are they equipped?
Yeah, I mean, personally speaking, I've been as a professor of English for more than 13 years. So always a quality test and assessment tests is the most welcome thing. That's how the benchmarks should be there to assess the quality of the teachers. Also, we always had orientation programs, refresher programs. So all of those are welcome. But at the same time, like you have to, before emphasizing on the quality of the teachers, the government has also, particularly this policy also, need to have spoken about the thousands of ad hoc teachers who have been working on ad hoc basis. What is their fate? What about the permanent, what about the employment being permanently fixed up? What about the fixation of their salaries? So when you are fixing up certain benchmarks for the quality of the teachers, which is a very most welcome thing. As an academician, I would welcome that. You should also give them a guarantee that they are well placed and their salaries are also up to the standard. All these assurances should also be given. And my friend Supriya has very beautifully put it in the way that we need not stress them with the board exams, but with the grading. I would say that she had put it with a slighter nuances, because we, as a party, as an academician, as an educationist, we totally oppose this board exam for 5th standard students itself. It puts an enormous pressure on them. Also, this vocational groups. See, that is where the sugar-coated pill lies.
Right.
I believe you are all familiar with the 4 Varna systems.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yes, the Varna system, those days the syllabus, before we all modified, those days the syllabus in Tamil says, Appa paper vasikirar, Amma samayal sehirar. And mentioning a caste of a worker, it would say, Our Falavai alar tuni tuvaikirar. This is how syllabus were framed those days. According to the Varnash, their occupations were defined. And we in Tamil Nadu, particularly after Periyar and respected Peraringer Anna and Kalaignar came, the rationalist, after the rationalist movement, everything, see, how you are learning it and where you are learning it is equally important about what you are learning it. That's where
let me control. Time is running out. I want to ask both the ladies, because both are very well educated, erudite, and whatnot. I will ask both of you. First, Supriya, what are the 2 good things in this education policy, and what are the 2 bad things in the education?
Well, the 2 good things which I like is the extension, which is from 3 to 18. How they're going to do it, I don't know, but I like it. And the second part is of the credits, which is going to give all the children a lot of flexibility. Again, I don't know how they're going to do it, but it sounds great. So these are 2 very, very good things which I like in it, but I don't know the roadmap to it. So that's the question mark. But these are, the intent is very good in both these points. Now, the things that worry me is when they're including 3 to 6 and extending to 18. How are we going to qualify? Who is going to handle this 3 to 6? Who's my Anganwadi Sevika? So the plan is wonderful, but I'm concerned as how are we going to reach there? So that I'm very, very worried, because I don't want these Anganwadi Sevikas to be removed and some teachers to be brought in. So I have concerns about that, clearly. And the other thing is this vocational point that they have got, that if you fail in something, you go into vocational. I have objection to that. No, coach the child more, make sure the child does better. You can't take away something from the child. He may just have had a bad year, may have been ill. There could be a family issue. How can you take away a right of a child? So these are, I mean, since you're asking for 2, I have a long list. For special children, I have a problem. For teachers, there is no, absolute program for teachers. I expected the policy to say that a teacher will be completely removed from doing any other work except teaching.
Yeah.
They shouldn't worry about building kaise ban raha hai or khane ka kya ho raha hai, beach, afternoons. When you bring in a change, a teacher's job is only to teach, not to do administrative things. In COVID times, the teachers have contributed hugely. My Anganwadi Sevika is overworked. So I think this is something we must have clarity on, I feel. So I'm a little disillusioned by
Dr.
this.
Sangha Pandian, you tell us what 2 things bad and 2 things good.
I'm just sort of a welcoming of its multidisciplinary aspects. That's the only aspect that I find a good change in the educational system, because students will be given a lot of opportunities to choose whichever that actually narrows down their pressure on it. They can choose, like, so the way of opening up various avenues, that's one thing that I welcome. But I have lot of negative points. 95% of the NEP just throws negative points only. For example, the worrisome factors are the centralization of education, completely undoing the federal rights of a state, even to frame a syllabi, right from that, conducting an examinations, also the undoing of UGC, ACITS, everything, setting up a council at the center. And the second most important worrisome point is it doesn't talk about reservation, about women education, and RTI also. These are very, very worrisome areas. As Supriya said, I do have many problematic areas to be pointed out, but this is totally against social justice, against the people, against the student, as well as the federal rights of the states. These are
if I am right, any constitutional guarantee about reservations can't be taken away by any policy. These are provisions which are inbuilt in the.
But it has to be visibly stated in this policy. No, it has to have stated. Any policy should have stated about it.
This I understood. The reservation will continue, unless they are withdrawn by the parliament.
No, as a policy, it has to talk about the women education also. There's nothing about it, and the RTA, the right of education, as well as there has to be a mention about reservation. Why not? See, it is that way or this way. It should have very well mentioned about it, because when you're talking about education in a broader system, saying that we are going to bring wonderful changes, we are going to bring changes in the students of in the Indian students, to make them ascend in the knowledge as well as in the global scenario, it should be the equal opportunity should be given to all people. That's what the constitution says. So I feel that, and our party also feels that there should be a mentioning of all these quotients, particularly about women education, about the reservation also, and then let the parliament decide it. But when you draft a policy, in the draft itself, there should have been a mention about it.
Here's the other thing which I say that about India, there's a uniqueness about India, it's a unity in diversity. India is united, there are so many diversities and whatnot, and therefore India has this unique thing which no other country in the world has. Do you think this education policy is meant to unite India as diversified nation or entity, or is it going to divide India?
See, with this monolithic, homogeneous, and bringing everything under one umbrella, there's every possibility of dividing India, which is a very worrisome point, which I wish it shouldn't happen. That's why we are all vociferously and vehemently opposing, saying that you should give the right to decide the syllabi, as well as to uphold our regional components also, from the framing of the syllabus till the board, conduct of exams, till that end, state should be given a free choice. That's why we say that education should be given in the state list. So personally, I feel that instead of uniting India, there is always this danger of dividing India. Dividing it. There is also a danger of dividing.
That's an inbuilt threat. You think there is some kind of a threat in the NEP which can divide India rather than uniting India?
Threat is too strong a word. I would like to play it a little safe. It's not actually threat, because we still believe in democracy. We still believe in constitutional rights of our thing. But there is it
suspicion.
Suspicion, and it sends a chill down your spine. You're suspicious. You have your own apprehensions about the.
What about Supriya? What do you think?
See, I think the biggest failure of the government is that we have to discuss this. I mean, the fact that somebody as senior as you felt like asking to MPs that is this going to unite or is this going to divide? This is an education policy. No, this is the unfortunate part. This shows the failure of it. That if it's an education policy, it's an academic topic. So there is no question of uniting or failure. But the fact that there is so much debate about it dividing India, that shows that there is a basic agenda of that, as well as there is a suspicion. And I mean, it's disappointing and it's a failure of the government that they are giving this impression, even if it's a section of society. So that's
See, what do you think? What is your own gut feeling after reading the policy?
My gut feeling is I'm still hopeful, because for me, education is not a political issue. For me, it's an emotional issue, because I feel there is some things, especially the state I come from, there are a lot of issues which are above politics. And fortunately, we're able to manage that. And I hope education and healthcare are two topics which, from the vibrant India at 75 we want to be. We want to be progressive.
But
So
in your state, for example, you have been talking about, I know your father, I've been speaking to you for many years now. And I've been in academics, I taught 11 years in a college, then I'm in journalism for 40 years. I'm asking you a question, this C language for her, she is opposed to it. Are you in favor of it? You are not, no?
I'm not against it at all. I myself was studied. I studied.
So you're part of it. Your father was part of the policy.
No. So we had Hindi and English compulsory, and our mother tongue also. So for me, the language issue is not as critical as it is to Chennai. They have different social issues. For us, it's not. I'm even happy if they add one more language. I'm happy to learn all languages.
So I would ask another question from both of you. What thing you will suggest, one statement which should be incorporated in the policy when it is presented before the parliament? What should be added to remove this suspicion which both of you are talking about?
Sumati, go ahead.
Yeah, the two-language formula has to be intact. The promise has to be kept. Not to disturb the two-language formula has to be.
But where was this promise made? Two-language formula.
Don't draw back to the days of our former prime. They have come a long way.
Yeah, I'm asking. You are saying it should be. You are saying two-language formula because as an academician, as well as a journalist, I have not heard of the two-language formula, which was any part of any policy statement of any government.
Right from our former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru.
He was the person three-language formula he proposed.
No, we were promised two-language formula in Tamil Nadu, and when there was a move to impose a three-language policy, we have had a riot. You must be familiar with all. Tamil Nadu was in fact, throughout the world, it was the first state which has sacrificed human lives for a language.
Yeah, I know. In the anti-Hindi riots, I remember that. Yeah.
So that is one point which I would like to keep it intact. And the second most important thing is that the setting up of a council to decide everything. For example, even for the government arts and science colleges, the entrance exam for BA courses, ordinary courses, entrance exams should be there, and everything should be decided by the council. So this centralization of the whole policy making should be shifted to the states. States should have equal rights.
You can have a GST council, like the GST, all you state is represented. You can have education council when everybody is represented.
That's very vague way of putting it. Specifically, states should have the rights to decide upon, because see, Tamil Nadu has its own unique features, as I told you. It's the same way Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, everything. So it has to be given the right to comprehend their own syllabus with the uniqueness of their regional flavors, all those concepts which are inbuilt in the regional qualities. So the right to frame the educational policy should be, 3/4 of it should be given to the states.
Yeah, Supriya, you want to say now?
No, I think especially when the Minister of State, especially of HRD, makes a statement, which is completely a Stone Age statement. I don't want to get into who said it and what he said. But I would like to say that I would expect the Honourable Prime Minister to reprimand him and say, this is not the thinking.
True.
There will be very good curriculum, which is modern, which will make every Indian qualified student to be a global citizen. I think with the world becoming so small, I think I would expect the Honourable Prime Minister to step in and say, let's keep education out of this, and anybody does this. The minute if he had reprimanded somebody making an outdated statement on science, then there's a problem. Like a minister says, papad khane se corona chala jayega. I mean, I have offense. I'm sure he meant it in a very funny way. But you're not allowed to crack jokes about something which is such a medical pandemic globally. It's not funny. So I have objection to that. So I expect, because he's not only a BJP Prime Minister, he's even my Prime Minister. I expect him to say, please don't talk nonsense. And especially in a country which has still people, that's why I said it's Shraddha and Andhashraddha. There's faith and there's blind faith. When in a country when there is so much blind faith, I mean, it actually breaks my heart to tell you that in Maharashtra, which is so liberal for so many years, we, of course, lost Mr. Dabolkar, who worked relentlessly against this. Was shot out, unfortunately. And when there was a child yesterday in Maharashtra who died because he had a stomach ache, and instead of taking him to the doctor, they burnt his stomach with some sort of a rod, and that poor child died. So when there is so much Andhashraddha in this country, and people who are decision makers make such statements, where do you expect people who are probably not that exposed or educated to turn to? So I think
when you speak in Parliament and EP, when it comes there, what amendment you would suggest or addition you would suggest to the Prime Minister?
No,
what you suggested is something else. But in the policy, what would you amendment?
In the policy, I would say that first of all, I'm very curious as how they're going to get the curriculum going, is which academicians are going to be asked to give inputs, because I think this has to be debated.
Yeah.
Because education is changing so fast, skilling is changing so fast. If you tomorrow had a mobile phone which you could repair like a Nokia phone, today it doesn't even exist in the market. So today's skilling is going to be so much more different. Look at us, yeah, we're sitting here on some thing called Zoom call, which didn't even exist in our lives 5 months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have flown to Chennai and I would have wanted and eating some nice uttapams after this whole conversation with you all, with my friend Sumati, which has changed our lives. So our life is changing so quickly. I actually feel sorry for kids of today because their skilling, it's not like Sumati and me got skilled and life went on and we were okay. These kids of today are going to have, so new technologies are coming, new skilling is going to be required. So the biggest game beyond languages and history and everything is, it's going to be skilling.
Right.
So I think that's most important one, and it worries me. I'd like to quote the Honourable Home Minister of this state, with Sumati of this country, where Sumati and me heard him sitting in Parliament and we were just aghast when he said, history has to be written the way it suits your country. I'm sorry, I disagree. History has to be factual, not to anybody's convenience. That's what history and documentation is all about. So this is what I have objection to.
So they have been saying, no, history has been written by the people who didn't talk. They have written their way. They want to write their way. Now they have got the mandate. Both of them are in.
No, it's a very unfair statement. I think we'll do a biggest disservice to our children by getting into this trap of UPA versus NDA when we're talking about our policy. Let's think big, yeah. Let's think global. We need our children to be global citizens in this game now.
This is about education. No? Education has to decide what is global, but which set of people decide what you are making a point, good point, that who will decide the syllabus. That's a big problem in this country because everybody is ideologically divided everywhere. The way history has written, they think it was not written properly. Absolutely. And then you feel what they are writing is not written properly. So who the person will decide what is good for the country?
No, we need people to brainstorm. Why can't we have historians together, people with languages? I mean, why can't we hear both sides? Why does everything have to be one way and bulldoze? It can be a little bit of both. It's like a GST council, like you talked about. We have problems in the GST council because what happens is, unfortunately, that people who are on that side, even the chief ministers disagree. The poor things don't have the bandit to say what they really want. They may disagree with what the GST council is saying, but it's all bulldozed, which is very, very unfortunate. So it's not us versus them. It's like taking an exam in the pandemic. You know, there were non-NDA chief ministers saying no exam, vis-a-vis all NDA chief ministers, even if they don't want the exam, they have to say we do. They just zip, no word. I don't think so. I think education is something nobody should zip on. We should all talk about, because it's about all our children. I think our generations will not forgive us if we don't have a fair and a just education system.
Yeah, Kaveri.
No, just that it was a wonderful discussion. I think I wish Parliament was open and, there were enough people from the other side to listen.
Question hour. We need question hour and
You need-
zero hour.
yeah,
Otherwise,
exactly.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
On the question hour statement has come from Mr. Joshi, Parliamentary Affairs, that said, except Derek O'Brien, nobody objected. Even your party did not object.
No, that's not what it is. We were in discussion with all of them, and they said that because of the time, there are 100 ways. There are issues which can be raised. 0 hour is cut down. And they told us that it maybe only lasts for 2 hours. So let's see what it can be. Our objection is we want to meet, we want to debate, and not necessary. Why are you scared of a question hour?
Question hour. Yeah. Why do you want to just
If you're
talk?
doing
Time
such a
pandemic,
great
na?
job,
Because what is happening now, Supriya, you know, most of the journalists have also been thrown out of the central all this time. So
But
they are
that's-
restricting time.
all for
That's
also,
true, but what
there's no
is the
central
point?
all for us also is what I hear. And 0
That's what
hour,
they-
half an hour.
Yeah,
It's
so I
unfortunate.
so I think with such brilliant parliamentarians, it's a pity that the government is not willing or able to listen to these suggestions. They will definitely make a difference to the education policy, and it's still not set in stone. According to them, it's still going to be revised. It's going to be discussed, but I wonder where and how.
Kaveri, one thing I want to know, because
yeah.
just a minute, I want to know from both of them. States have not formulated their policy, reaction to the policy yet, it
Exactly.
seems. They have to formulate their own policy statewide, then it will come, because Maharashtra has not given it a considered opinion through
Right.
assembly or
They
somewhere else.
should.
Tamil Nadu has not given any opinion on that.
The most inefficient state government of Tamil Nadu hasn't it submitted.
And what
Ouch.
about Maharashtra?
The
Maharashtra is-
politician finally gave the punch.
What about
Politician-
Maharashtra, Supriya?
No, we've had a
But
round
our
table.
leader has submitted a memorandum to the education minister regarding the policy, much ahead of it.
More
Excellent.
power to women.
Yeah.
So we've made a task force and we are taking inputs from all vice chancellors, teachers. We've opened a forum and we're just getting feedback from people because you have to hear from everybody. It can't be just
Absolutely.
highway to highway.
Absolutely. I think it was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Mr. Chawla. And
Mr. Chawla.
yeah, and let's have more.
He's saying Supriya is trying to pull my leg. What are you saying, Supriya?
She's just thanking you.
Chavla.
Yes.
Please,
Uncle Chawla.
when you know people for too many years, they just bully you.
This is the most
I'm used to
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Thank
Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Sumati.
Nice
Thank
seeing you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.